Shalom and good day all, this is Tehillim29 back again for another DC comic review for Rainbow Press and Comics, and with this DC comic review I'll be reviewing these Batman titles, Joshua Williamson's Batman 119, and I must admit I really like the cover, but I'll get to giving the rating for the cover soon enough. And last but not least, Detective Comics Batman by Mariko Tamaki, which will be the first one that we'll be starting off with. So, let's get to it. Alright, jumping into first things first. The covers. Do any of these covers connect to something that's happening inside of the story? Well, we already know that the variant isn't related to anything inside of the story, but I do actually like that cover, and I think you'll be surprised with the rating I give it. For the second cover though, or the first cover, it does connect somewhat quite well with what's happening inside the story, but I would have preferred the cover to be slightly different. I think they would have done better if they, well, made the characters a little bit smaller, say, not done what they've done with the character, but maybe make him all about this size, which they have over here in this corner. I will not be reviewing the backstory, and the same also goes for the Batman 119. So for its cover rating for the first cover on the left hand side, I gave it a 6.5 out of 10. And for the second cover, even though I know Bruce Wayne isn't in the story, I gave it a 8 out of 10. I really enjoyed it that much. So now it's time to cover the internal art, which I'll be covering the beginning, middle, and of course the end. But like before, I will not be covering the backstory. Alright, and this is some of the art around the beginning. And as you can see here, we've got like a bit of a story happening here, as well as a comic reference as to where this leads to and takes place. And last but not least, finally, Arkham Tower. I'll now jump towards the middle of the story, and as we jump towards the middle of the story, we notice that some things have been happening in the tower. And of course, Amanda Kano at City Hall, and Dr. Weir. And now it's time to jump towards the end, to which we see Cassandra Cain as Batgirl, Batwoman, Kate Kane, and last but not least, Oracle, as they too are watching over the tower. For the internal art, I decided to give it a 7 out of 10. Now it's time to move on to the story, and as you personally know, there are things that I personally enjoy in my storytelling, and we'll jump into first things first, and the fact that we did actually get a comic reference, which is a really good thing, and it helps to show the continuity of the story and also what's happening. We were referenced to Infinite Frontier issue 0, so basically the first issue of that series. Moving into the area of time, these times were actually covered in periods of days, so we're learning that at the beginning, it's taking place at day 7 in relation to the tower, and then we end up jumping forward to day 24. Moving into the locations, we of course had Arkham Tower. We also had a diner, and last but not least, City Hall. We had Deb Donovan, Manacano, of course, Batwoman, Oracle, Nightwing. We also was told that was present, but we didn't actually get to see him. And also Batgirl Cassandra Cain. Overall, this story felt pretty average, and I don't know how long this story will be going for, but it's going to be interesting in reviewing this. But as soon as it's turning up, I'll see how things go with the next issue in relation to the Tower, or Arkham Tower story. For the story rating, I gave it a 7 out of 10, and now it's time to jump towards Batman issue 119. So now it's time to jump into Batman issue 119 by Joshua Williamson. And starting off with first things first, in relation to the cover, does this cover in any way, shape or form connect to something that's happening inside of the story? You bet it does, and I gave it a 7.5 out of 10. I'll now show you some of the art around the beginning, middle and the end. I will not be covering the backstory, but just some small thoughts on the backstory. I would give that a 7 out of 10 because I found it somewhat enjoyable. Let's jump to the art. Okay, first things first, this is some of the art around the beginning of the story. And of course we have Lex Luthor, who's encountered Bruce Wayne. And we can see here that they've had a little bit of talk about their past as well as what's presently happening. As well as Detective Kaya, who's also on the scene with them. I'll now jump towards the middle of the story. And as we jump towards the middle of the story, we have the character of Batman slowly making his way to the morgue. Must admit, I am enjoying this art. And last but not least, let's go towards the end. And as we can see here, the detective has found Batman, as he looks somewhat roughed up. So for the internal art, I gave it a 7 out of 10. Let's jump into the story and how it will be rated. Of course, first things first, just like the previous, it will be covered in comic references and will affect the story rating. Seeing that there were no comic references to the previous issue, did it somewhat affect the story rating? Not a lot, not a lot. Time was brought up in the story, and it was just made out as years ago. There wasn't given an exact number as to how many years ago, and in that time to which you did get to see that brought up, you got to see Alfred actually talking to Bruce Wayne. So that was really interesting. The location, I've really forgotten the location of where this takes place in the DC universe, and it needs to be brought back on track again with this story. About the only thing that I did manage to make out of one of the locations to where Batman went to was in fact the morgue, to which he was going to investigate the death of Abyss, only to learn that, well, the guy is bloody alive. The cast of characters consisting of Alfred, Batman, Lex Luthor, Detective Kaya, and of course, last but not least, Abyss. Overall story rating is a 7.5 out of 10. I do look forward to the next issue, and I really hope that those little problems that were sort of like covered in this one are fixed up in the next one. Until then, let's keep colourful and have yourself an awesome day.